All right, guys. Well, this is a special pleasure. Our next guest is one of the most iconic sports broadcasters of our time, known for his amazing work across WCW and WWE. He is the host of the Smash Hit podcast, The Ross Report, and the author of the best-selling book, Slobberknocker, My Life in Wrestling. It's a pleasure to welcome good old JR Jim Ross back to Submission Radio. Jim, welcome back to the program. It's great to have you.
Thank you, gents. Good to be with you again.
The pleasure is absolutely ours, Jim, and we've seen that you've been extremely busy going around and promoting your great book, Slobberknocker, My Life in Wrestling. We know the book came out this year, so tell us, why did you wait so long to put out a book, and why now?
Well, I had time. My schedule for many years was so monopolized by WWE travel, pay-per-views, and every Monday night for Raw. So I never really, in my administrative duties, there was just no extra time in the day. So when I left the company in 2013, I decided that there were some projects I wanted to work on, and one was the book, and one was, a podcast, and some other things. I wanted a one-man show. So I had time, and I needed to invest that time in reinventing myself at 61 years of age then. So that was kind of the deal. Timing was a big issue, and I think I kind of wanted to reestablish myself that I'm still in the game in some shape, form, or fashion, and so been able to do that, especially with the Access TV and New Japan stuff I'm doing as well. So it was an extension of my slowing down a little bit, and I'm glad that we were able to finish it after my wife got killed. She was a big part of it. In March, she got killed, and I was in the home stretch of trying to be creative and write the rest of the book with Paul O'Brien. So it was challenging, fellas. It was challenging, but I'm glad that we got it done, and I'm proud of it. I'm really proud that we finished, and I'm proud that it's being loved by a lot of people around the world.
Absolutely. And when we think about some of our favorite wrestling books, we think about Chris Jericho's first book, Mick Foley's early books, Bret Hart's book was really good. Did you kind of have a book in mind that kind of inspired you in the style that you were writing your own?
Oh, gosh. Good question. The thing I wanted to do was to be unique, because I think my story is unique. Most wrestling fans can identify more with JR's story than they can a Kurt Angle, Olympic gold medalist, all these great accolades athletically. Well, my accolades didn't come from being athletic. My accolades came from being a fan and being dedicated to the business and finding my niche. So and a lot of people can do the same thing I've done in various vocations. Just don't let anybody else define you, and don't give up on your dreams is my big thing. So I read Brett's book. I liked it a lot. Mick's book. I read Mick's book as he was writing it by hand. He'd come to Raw Monday night. So I was reading that page by page. And I don't want to sound like I'm a literary expert. I'm not. But reading it was finishing the pages that he had for me to read was always a disappointment because there wasn't more. So Mick's book, get-go, man. So but look, I just want the book to be honest. And my wife stressed honesty, and maybe I can help some people with some issues. I've been bullied. I've had some issues with prescription medications that I had never talked about until the book, and stuff like that, and taking care of myself, and how I mismanaged being a father, and I wasn't a very good husband early on. So it was really a cathartic thing. I told everything that was, worth telling, I thought. So that was the deal. It's an honest book of a real person's real journey in a very bizarre business.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, that's exactly the kind of story that people want to read. When people are that brutally honest and they lay everything on the line, and the reader knows that and understands that, those are exactly the kind of stories and biographies and books that people want to read. And, we know obviously there's bound to be countless great stories spanning decades in pro wrestling, but if you could, what's one quick story from the book that sort of stands out to you that maybe you can share with the listeners to set the tone for what they can expect from this one?
Oh, man, there's a lot of moments that are memorable, to say the least. I tell the story in more detail, obviously, than I can here, but I drove Leroy McGurk, my first boss, the owner of the territory in Oklahoma. We were going down to Louisiana to do TV. We did TV there every other week, and I drove him down there. It's like 300 miles, and on the way down there, he got really, really hammered, drunk, He pulled his gun out of his .44 Magnum out of his little bag, put that on the dash, which I never understood that. He's a blind man now, and kept hitting that whiskey. And then he was smoking a big cigar, and I wasn't watching. And the ashes got long. They fell into his lap. He was wearing a pair of polyester pants, and he caught himself on fire. The ash through the pants and dropped into his crotch. And he started swinging his arms. I'm in this big old Cadillac, going about 60 miles an hour or more, weaving all over the road, found out pull off, and I had to put the fire out, and the fire was in his drawers. So it was an interesting. It'll be a great scene if we ever do a movie. I can tell you that. But a lot of those things, the McGuire twins, they were going to quit my little run I was doing in independence of these benefit events for McGurk, and they were going to quit because they got beat up in their match and bullied, quite frankly. And even though one was 660 and one was 640 allegedly, they got bullied. And they were in the shower crying, and they were hurting and all this. And so I had to go to save the day. I went down to talk them out of quitting, and I gave them a little more money for that night. I volunteered to buy them dinner. All you can eat, fellas, all you can eat. Hear that now, all you can eat. And they said, they thanked me and everything, and said, we can't raise our arms. Will you wash our back? So here's two naked 600-plus pound twins in a shower with me and this massive sponge that should be washing like an elephant or something, and I was washing their back. Another crazy scene for a movie, perhaps, but it was just life on the road. It was the Wild West, in essence. There was, unfortunately, there was no drug testing. There are very few governing bodies. It was a strong survived, and that's kind of how I was raised in the business. That, you're very tentative here. You may stay a week, you may stay 10 years, but you got to live it day by day, and that's kind of how I've lived my career, day by day.
Yeah, unbelievable. Obviously recommending everybody pick up this book. So many great stories, like you mentioned, like that one. So many fantastic things happening around that time in the world of pro wrestling. Want to get your thoughts on some things happening right now in the world of pro wrestling and MMA. But before we move on, just quickly, that word Slobberknocker. I mean, a lot of people know that word because of you, because you're commentating, the way that you said it during a lot of these iconic matches. Are you one of the, I suppose, people behind this word? How did you come around the Slobberknocker word? Because I feel like before you, I didn't really hear it used much anywhere at all. And now, down here in Australia, when something crazy happens, you still hear people trying to put on the Jim Ross voice and pull out the Slobberknocker from time to time.
Oh, Lord. Slobberknocker is a very old, like in the 1930s, 40s, American football term. Because in those days, the players wore helmets, but they did not wear a face mask like they do now in American football. So their faces were exposed. You saw a lot of guys with broken noses and busted teeth and busted lips and so forth. And the old theory was, if you hit somebody hard enough, that the spittle, the froth, will be expelled from their mouth from the impact of the hit. Hence the word Slobberknocker. The slobber comes out, the harder you knock it, the slobber comes flying out. And I heard old coach say that, and I didn't know what it meant either. And the more I thought, I was like in 7th grade. And so it's been around a while, and in the 60s is where I heard it. And then I filed it away, and it's kind of, I thought, well, that's kind of a cool word, cool term. So then I got in wrestling, and I just recalled it. It worked for a lot of situations. So that's what a Slobberknocker is.
Wow. Do you remember the first time you ever used that phrase? You said that you sort of filed it away for a later date. Do you remember the first time you ever whipped that one out during a match?
I don't. I'm sure it was in the 70s when I actually used it on television. Now, a lot of the guys on American sports casting, especially in the NFL and USC and things, I've heard those guys use Slobberknocker before. Baseball fight, hockey fights, those type of things. So it's getting out there, and it's actually in the Urban Dictionary, and I get credit for creating the word, which I didn't create, but never thought I'd seen myself in the Urban Dictionary either. But it's just been one of those crazy things that's happened to me along the way.
I feel like whenever anybody uses it, like in MMA or any other pro wrestling, I almost feel like it's a homage to you and just a little thing of, hey, we're big Jim Ross fans. Because every time someone says it, you're the first name that comes to mind. But anyway, let's talk about some of the big stories in MMA and pro wrestling, because we don't have you for a long time and you're a busy guy. One of the first things I wanted to bring up with you, Jim, was Jack Swagger's departure from the WWE to Bellator. For a lot of people in the MMA world, they may not really know how much of a big deal this is, but if people looked into his background, he was a top-level amateur wrestler in his day. So I want to know from you, how do you believe he'll do in his crossover to MMA?
Well, you're right. He was a two-time All-American in collegiate wrestling at the University of Oklahoma, about 3 miles from where I'm sitting right now at the field house. He was a really decorated football player as well, defensive tackle, so big, rangy, strong guy. So the bottom line of it is he's a legitimate athlete with some really strong credentials. The key to me for him being successful, because he's not starting as a pup. He's got a little age on him, maturity, better way to say maturity perhaps. He's not beat up. He's not wore out. He's starting a new sport kind of late. But with that said, his athleticism will make up for that. The key for him, in my view, he's got to get a great striking coach that can teach him to effectively strike, but more importantly, perhaps, is to effectively defend the other guy's strikes. And I've seen that a lot of the really great amateurs in MMA, their one Achilles heel oftentimes is their striking defense. So if he can get striking defense down and he doesn't get overmatched early in his fights, I won't count him out of any fight. I'll tell you that. He's a tough guy. I got him signed. I'm looking at my couch right now. He was sitting on it many nights, talking about what's next. And I got him a tryout, and he took the ball from there. I didn't do. All I got him was a tryout because I liked him. He's a big, rangy guy, and he's an Oklahoma guy and hometown kid. But I think he has a chance. Again, striking defense seems to be the key.
Yeah, and I like your honesty. You're obviously not overcommitting to him being the next great champion or the next big thing. But you mentioned striking defense, and of course a lot of people think of Brock Lesnar, who had incredible success, obviously came from the WWE, also a big, powerful, athletic guy, also had the wrestling acumen as well. But given Swagger's wrestling credentials, the fact that he was also athletic enough to have a background in football, and just the era in which Swagger competed as a collegiate wrestler and the guys he faced along the way, do you think he could possibly be even more gifted than Brock Lesnar?
Well, that remains to be seen. Lesnar won a national title here, NCAA heavyweight champion at Minnesota. And right after he won that, we signed him. And Jerry Briscoe and I have been working on that for 2 years. We could have signed him a year earlier. Nobody knows that story, but we didn't. But I don't know, man. I mean, Lesnar is such an extraordinary big athlete. I mean, he's bigger than Swagger. He probably is stronger than Swagger. But, you can't judge a man's heart by weight and inches, that's for sure. But, boy, to say that he's going to be better than Lesnar would be a tall task to predict. Hey, I'd love for him to be. That'd be great for him. He'd make some great money. But Lesnar's just kind of that once-in-a-lifetime guy that we just don't see come along very often.
And speaking of Lesnar, we've heard that there's been some debate about his future, obviously online. A lot of people talking about his contract possibly running out after WrestleMania next year, and currently there's doubt about him re-signing with the WWE. I'm just wondering from you, Jim, do you think there's a chance we see Lesnar leave the WWE next year? And if so, I mean, where would he go?
I don't know the answer to your question, but I'll tell you this. If I were advising him, I'm not, by the way, I would say, you're going to leave to do what? Are you going to leave to retire and not do anything but hunt and raise your sons and be a good husband to your wife? I don't know. Are you going to launch another career? What some guys like to do, sometimes they need new challenges. I read where he might be play the son of in the Rocky movie, Creed's opponent that got beat by the Russian guy. And he may play that Russian guy's son. I read that. I had no idea if it was even true. But I don't know why he'd want to leave. He's got a beautiful schedule. He's making well north of 7 figures a year. And he works part-time. and he has fun. I don't know why I would say this. I'd answer the question. Leave to do what? That's better. So, because he can still be contracted to WWE and make movies or, things like that. I don't see him getting back into MMA. Now, I might be wrong on that one, but I don't see that being a fit for him going forward. But I can certainly see him in Hollywood. I can certainly see him doing other things like that, but that's not really his style either. He likes to be home or working at wrestling. So I don't know why he would leave, other than the obvious, scheduling and so forth. My boys are getting older, but he's got a great gig, man, and I think he really embraces it and appreciates it.
And obviously, as far as the MMA fans go, obviously every few months there's headlines or rumors that pop up about, maybe Brock Lesnar will come back, or here's a theory on how he possibly could come back. You're sort of the feeling that it's unlikely that he'll come back to the UFC or MMA in general. Why is that?
Well, he's been there, done that. He got that one more match when he beat Mark Hunt at WrestleMania 200, UFC 200. I was there, by the way, so I saw it in person. He's 39, almost, is he 40? MMA fans jones about Lesnar being gone because the MMA in general is lacking superstars. They're lacking box office attractions. They're no different than any pro wrestling promotion in the world. Their job is to create superstars that people demand to see more of. And right now, of course, with the fighting as it is, you're lucky to have 3 fights a year if you can stay healthy. And there are no major stars that are early 20s, young guys that are like the next big thing. I don't know who that is. And there's always everybody's got an opinion, but the MMA world in general, the reason people are jonesing for Lesnar is because they got nobody better to cheer for right now. That's why they wanted George St. Pierre back. That's why they want Cain Velasquez back in the ring. They want Conor McGregor to fight again. Well, I'm not missing any new names here. I'm missing all these dudes that got some mileage and a track record.
I mean, it's a little bit of a different game to pro wrestling, but when you see the way the UFC builds some of the names and the way they go about, I suppose, putting some of these matchups together, do you think they could do something a little bit better to sort of build names a little bit quicker, maybe put together smarter matchups or go around promotion in a different way to sort of, I suppose, build up a lot of these cards that fans do believe are a little bit lackluster?
I don't know that I'm qualified to be an MMA matchmaker, but I do know that the quest to build stars is imperative. And I can tell you that they can do a better job of getting outside their actual fight envelope and do a better job of maximizing that television time to focus on new stars. Let me know who they are. Let me know how they train. Let me know if they're married and I want to meet their wife. I want to meet their kids that got them. I want to know more about them. I need to make an emotional investment in these guys, other than the fact they're loaded with tattoos, they got bad ears, and generally disenfranchised noses. I need more than that. I need who they are, because other than that, they're just another body. Just beat on somebody. I need more, and I don't know that we get that all the time. And look, I'm a big MMA fan. I'm a big supporter of UFC and Bellator. I've met Dana White. I've met Scott Coker, both fine gentlemen. But they will tell you the same thing, maybe off the record. Our ass has got to make new stars, or we're going to slip in our market share. And they got to get somebody hot. And the way you get somebody hot is you introduce to the audience, you let them get to know them, and then you build the anticipation for their next fight.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people would agree with that. And while we're talking, obviously, about Jack Swagger and big stars going over to MMA, Ronda Rousey looks like she's doing the exact opposite. She looks like she's set to go over with the WWE. And with reports of her training and being potentially part of next year's WrestleMania, what did you think about the news? I mean, this is something that's sort of been going on for a very long time. A lot of people expected her for a long time to somehow end up in the WWE. It looks like it's closer than ever. How did you take the news?
I don't know if it's official or not, but I've said for a long time that she was a fit made in box office heaven for WWE. Ronda has got amazing name identity globally. She's the legit deal. I have amazing respect for her, because you got to remember, at one time, none of the major MMA promotions were going to promote women. Certainly in USC, they said no way, no how. But then all of a sudden, Ronda goes, she's in Strike Force and gets to be, hugely popular. People love that hip lock and, her submissions. And she just had charisma. She's a beautiful woman. I just think that it's a perfect fit there. And whether she signs for a one-off or a short term or a handful of matches, I have no idea. But obviously, if she does sign, one would assume that it would have something to do with a WrestleMania appearance. And I'd love to see that in New Orleans this year. I'll be down there, and I'd love to see her compete, because she will train with the same intensity, the same desire to be great at that genre as she did in MMA. And of course, we all know the outcomes are predetermined, all this stuff. And I talk to a lot of sports guys. They want to make sure I know that they know that wrestling is entertainment. Thanks for the heads up, right? You should have got that early on, but now I'm glad the lights flipped. The switch has been flipped. She'll work as hard getting ready, because she'll want to steal the show. She'll want to go out and certainly not embarrass herself, but to excel. So she brings a lot of cachet to the dance. And you look around the roster of people that she could wrestle theoretically, it's really impressive. There's some matchups, Ronda Rousey and the undefeated Asuka at WrestleMania. Something's got to give, right? You got Charlotte and Ronda Rousey. Love to see that. So there's a lot of talents there. You could go down the list of all the great women that WWE's signed, and there's a story there for Ronda, because every woman could make the story that I want to be the one that beats Ronda Rousey. So she's not going to come to my world and dominate like she did MMA and the UFC and so forth. So I think it's inevitable. I just don't know when or where. But to me, as I said earlier, Ronda Rousey and WWE is a match made in box office heaven.
I'm curious, because you mentioned how it could have come together earlier. A lot of people are saying the only negative about this happening now is a lot of people maybe are a little bit more down on Ronda than they were before when she had that appearance at WrestleMania with The Rock. She's lost a few fights in a row. A lot of the MMA fans kind of have negative feelings about her and her legacy as champion, because they're finding a lot of holes in the girls that she beat, and also talking about some of the limitations that she had in the striking area. Do you feel like the WWE sort of missed the boat a little bit by not getting her on a little bit earlier, or do you think it can still be as successful as it could have been when she was at her prime?
It will be as successful now as it would have been then. And she's a star, and her star is shining. And I think some of those fans that are actually had the nerve to say that she was not as good as we thought she wasn't as good as we thought she was, is pretty ignorant. She changed the game. She opened the door that these other women are walking through and making a bunch of money. And Gina Carano will get a lot of that credit, as she should. But Ronda was the one that put the thing on the map. And Ronda was the one that got into UFC and opened the door for all these other women. Now they got weight classes, as you guys know, and there's a lot of young women that heretofore would not have made a dime in fighting if it hadn't been for a platform like UFC. And of course, I'm not caught on the Strike Force women thing yet, but Strike Force is building a brand, and they're in the process of building a brand. So, and maybe Swagger, as you guys mentioned, can help them there. I don't know. I hope he can. But Ronda's a star, and I would be as motivated to sign her now as I would have been 5 years ago.
Jim, we really appreciate the time. We'll let you go in just a moment. Just quickly before we do, obviously we're speaking about big stars, UFC stars, and there's currently no bigger star right now than Conor McGregor. You mentioned him a little bit earlier. Do you believe that Vince McMahon actually knows who Conor McGregor is? How well do you think he knows, about him, who he is, and would he have an actual legitimate interest in bringing him into the WWE and potentially working a program?
Oh, yeah. Vince knows who Conor McGregor is. Vince doesn't live on Uranus. He's pretty well read. He pays attention. And Paul Levesque certainly knows who Conor McGregor is. Look, I don't have this, concrete information or source told me all that good stuff. I would be very surprised if the two parties on some level haven't had some kind of communication. It may be lawyer to lawyer, probably that more than anything, but just to feel out interest. Conor is another global star, and Conor will sell wrestling tickets because for a one-off, or a one-time deal, he'll sell tickets to see how he's going to do. And he strikes me as the kind of guy that has such a competitive ego that he will do anything to not fail, to not look bad. And I cross off the attraction exhibition match he had with Floyd Mayweather. You know, they both got richer. Cool for them. I'm happy. But it didn't do any favors to either one of their careers or boxing. Their bankers loved it, and so maybe that's all that matters. But I think that Conor would be a major hit there because, A, he can talk. And that's half the battle. And, again, he's competitive so that he wouldn't want to embarrass himself. So I think somewhere down the road, if the stars align, that's another guy that will be, in his deal, I'm sure it'd be a one-off. I'm thinking, I'm not sure, but I assume it'd probably be a one-off. But, you know, once he's done with MMA and/or boxing or whatever, he's going to look for something else to do that's going to be fun for him and challenging, and that would be it. I mean, he fits right in. He's a hell of an athlete, and you know he's tough. But, you know, he walks like Mr. McMahon. He told people he picked that up from Vince. That walk he does is when he was doing all that barnstorming tour for Floyd, he walked down the stage just like Vince, waving his arms, strutting around. It was a heat-seeking missile, and his fans ate it up. But the real boxing purists, and Lord knows they can't be you know, vilified. They're so sanctimonious that they didn't like it because he was wink doing harm to the game of boxing. Are you kidding me? The game of boxing is being harmed by one guy. Hey, all you veterans have done, the promoters and all the boxing people have done a damn good job of screwing up boxing over the last 2 or 3 decades. So don't blame it on Conor.
Mm-hmm. Very true, Jim. Last question, and then we'll let you go. We saw there was a bit of bad blood from some of the boys in the WWE. It looked like a little bit of heat on social media responding to Conor McGregor, some of the comments that he made. Do you think if McGregor did step into the WWE world, he might have to sort of deal with some of those relationships, maybe set them straight with a lot of wrestlers in the back who might be, you know, not the biggest fans of him coming in, making a lot of money and sort of leaving? Because we've heard stories of Roddy Piper with Mr. T and a lot of other cases where big names would come in and some of the boys wouldn't be too happy about it.
Different generation, different time. The thing about the theory that you mentioned there of Conor coming in, making a big payday and leaving, well, while he's getting to that payday, and at that payday, he's generating revenue for the company. And the talents share in the revenues on the discretionary payroll. So all Conor's going to do is cook bigger pies for the wrestlers to get a bigger slice. They're like, and some of the guys on social media are like a lot of fans, fellas. They're keyboard warriors. They're brave as hell when they're on their little keypad. And they'll say anything they want to say because they're safe. They're protected. And so, but when Conor's around, I got to believe that they would gravitate. How many selfies do they would be taken with Conor in the locker room if he came in? You know, he'd be deluged. So I don't look at that. No issue there whatsoever. And you know, Roddy with a different spirit. There's no Roddy Pipers in these dressing rooms. Let me put it that way. And I don't mean that negatively at all. Roddy was an amazing. He was a Wild West survivor, and he, you know, grew up hard. And he was a different cat than some of the kids now that, you know, Roddy probably couldn't, like me, had a hard time turning on a computer, much less using one. So Roddy was that old man's man and, you know, a lot of pride, and that's just how he's broken the business. So I don't think it would be an issue whatsoever. If I were talents, I would be ecstatic because you know that when Conor McGregor would appear on Monday Night Raw, the ratings would be skyrocketing. What's he going to do? What's next? Could you believe what they did? And you could do that for several weeks of episodic booking that lead to the crescendo, the WrestleMania match or whatever it may be. So I see nothing but winners in that scenario.
Wow. Well, it's well put, Jim. Thank you so much for your time. Interested to see what happens in the crazy world of MMA. But for now, guys, make sure to check out the roster report. I think there's a big episode coming up with Chris Jericho, so that's going to be a can't-miss episode before the year runs out. Of course, check out his amazing book, Slobberknocker, My Life in Wrestling. That's available across all good bookstores in Australia and also Amazon Australia, which has just now opened last week. And, of course, check Jim out on Twitter at JR's Barbecue. Of course, the barbecue sauces. Make sure to jump on and order them. A lot of stuff happening. The one-man show hopefully coming down to Australia soon. Jim, thank you so much for your time. It's a real pleasure having you on the program.
All right, lads. Enjoy your day, and happy holidays to you and all your listeners. I appreciate you.